I knew they didn't understand what I did when I heard Gary from sales say, "Wait, we have servers." That was after he spilled his smoothie into the break room power strip and took down half a floor's Wi-Fi. Still, nobody asked me how it got fixed. Just like nobody asked how the VPN stayed stable through 3 hurricane seasons, or how our SSO integrations passed every audit with 0 flags, or how the entire company's access to production stayed up 24/7 without divine intervention or apparently any recognition. I was the divine intervention. I was the woman behind the curtain, the quiet one in the corner cube with the thick cardigan and noise-canceling headphones, sipping burnt coffee and carrying the whole damn infrastructure on my aching back. I didn't mind. I wasn't in it for the spotlight. I'm in my mid-40s, 2 kids in college, 2 cats with IBS, and one ex-husband who still texts me every April like I'm his personal tax fairy. My joy came from uptime percentages and clean dashboards, from vendor reports that passed with 0 corrections, from knowing, really knowing, that this house only stood because I'd reinforced every rusty nail with epoxy and foresight. For 8 years, I managed the backbone of a logistics tech firm with the kind of pride a ship captain has for an engine room nobody visits. Network permissions, third-party auth tokens, firewall rules, audit trails, encryption keys, compliance checklists. All mine. There were licenses tied to my credentials, protocols built around my certifications. We weren't Amazon, but we were big enough that if our production went down, money started bleeding out of arteries nobody even knew were there. I made sure that never happened. And hey, since 90% of y'all listen to these stories without subscribing, maybe toss a like and hit that follow button. It's free, and it keeps our team caffeinated and emotionally stable enough to keep digging up stories like this. Appreciate it. Anyway, like I said, I wasn't flashy. I didn't chirp in meetings or throw my weight around. I wore the same 5 outfits on loop. My inbox was clean, my to-do lists were sacred, and I had quarterly meetings with our security vendor that legal always skipped until they didn't. Until one of those legal reps got promoted. Until she brought in him. Brent Walker, the new VP of Strategic Operations. His business card might as well have been printed on a CrossFit towel. Tan, teeth too white, suit too slim. The kind of guy who says circle back unironically and fist bumps the intern while mispronouncing her name. He came in all spreadsheets and ego, announcing efficiency audits and modernization initiatives with the energy of a dude who just learned what Slack is. I watched him from behind my second monitor, half listening while he rattled off terms like streamline redundancy and optimize cost centers. I knew that I was a cost center, name that didn't bubble up on any dashboards, a salary that didn't sparkle on a pie chart. Never mind that those pie charts ran on platforms I personally kept breathing. Still, I did what I always did. Documented, reviewed, patched, repeated. My cert for the third-party security license was up for renewal in Q3, and I had already sent my updated training logs to the vendor. That license, the one keeping our production environment safe, was tied to me my name, my cert ID, my annual compliance re-ups. Years ago, when we renegotiated the contract, I'd insisted on that clause. Assign license to a named credentialed party with renewal authority. I was that party. The clause wasn't secret. It was in the procurement doc. Highlighted, in fact. But that's the thing about companies, they stop reading once they hit the green check mark. I kept the system humming, re-authenticated the tokens, ran the audit test suite. On paper, everything was fine, but I could feel it shifting like the air before a summer storm, like when the cat hides under the bed 2 hours before the sirens start wailing. Because Brent wasn't here to learn, he was here to clean house. And I could tell from the way he asked me to summarize what I actually do that he saw me as one of the old fixtures, something to be replaced with a shinier, cheaper LED bulb. So I smiled, I nodded, and I made sure every single thing I touched was traceable, documented, and backed up. Because I knew the moment was coming. And when it did, I wouldn't have to say a word. The system would speak for me. Brent's first big move was to install glass doors on the executive suite. Real revolutionary stuff, said it symbolized transparency. Which was rich, considering he'd just laid off 3 project managers via email and blamed it on budget turbulence. His second move? Weekly all-hands meetings where he talked about synergy and accountability, while the real work piled up like corpses in a war no one declared. He loved optics. He loved charts. He loved hearing his own voice echo off the new drywall he had installed. And he especially loved finding ways to eliminate redundancy, which, in plain English, meant pushing out anyone who wasn't shiny enough to look good on a slide deck. I watched him glide around the office like he was hosting a TED talk nobody asked for, his hair so gelled you could bounce a dime off it, and his iPad clutched like a preacher's Bible. My first real taste of his agenda came in a Tuesday ops review. I was halfway through explaining a firewall exception request when he interrupted. Let's pause there. Does anyone else not understand what she just said? A few chuckles. My face went hot, but I didn't flinch. Brent smiled like he just taught a puppy to sit. We're gonna simplify all that. No more legacy jargon, we're building a modern stack now. Legacy, that's what I'd become. not a person, a process. A budget line with a graying ponytail and too many documented protocols. Then came the calendar invite. One-on-one sync, Brent Walker. No agenda. Just that ominous little gray block parked on my Thursday afternoon like a funeral with finger food. Didn't even pretend to make it personal. As part of our strategic realignment, he said, in that flat HR voice he probably rehearsed in front of a mirror, we're sunsetting a few legacy roles. Sunsetting, like I was a damn screensaver. We've decided to consolidate infrastructure ops under a more agile model. Cross-functional, tech-forward, metrics-aligned translation. We found someone cheaper. He slid over a bland folder and gestured like he was offering me a damn croissant. We're grateful for your service and wish you well in your future endeavors. I opened the folder. Severance terms, clean exit, no bridge burned because they assumed I wouldn't bring matches. You'll be working with your replacement for the next 2 weeks, he added, almost like an afterthought. Just make sure the handoff's smooth. We don't want any hiccups. Enter Hannah, 27, freshly certified from a 2-week DevSecOps bootcamp, and armed with a LinkedIn profile that read like a resume made by ChatGPT on a caffeine bender. Excited to be driving innovation in legacy ecosystems. She posted the day she joined, with a selfie from our parking lot. She carried a ring light in her backpack and wore a Fitbit that buzzed every time her dopamine levels dipped below girl boss. I trained her. Of course I did. I'm not a monster. She asked good questions, took notes, and treated me like I was a fossil worth studying. You actually built the token rotation scripts yourself? That's so vintage, I smiled, nodded, showed her how to file the compliance reports where the VPN logs were stored, which vendor dashboards updated in UTC time instead of local. I walked her through the license renewals, including the security suite. I pointed at the clause, right there in the procurement docs, highlighted like a traffic light, tied to named credentials. Not transferable, requires recertification for reassignment. Oh cool, she said, snapping a photo of the screen. I'll make a TikTok explainer about this one day. When our last day together rolled around, I handed her a printed copy of the full checklist. Everything signed off, everything in order. Even the note at the bottom, pending license transfer awaiting compliance sign-off. Legal's reviewing, she said. Distracted, already trying to install a browser plugin Brent recommended. Should be fine. I walked out at 5:03 p.m., my badge deactivated at exactly 5:05. No party, no speech. No cupcake in the break room. Just an auto-generated farewell message sent from HR's system with my name misspelled. Friday night, Brent addressed the team. She's gone, but it's business as usual, he said, smiling with the confidence of a man who thinks he just deleted all the important files off a flash drive and called it innovation. I watched the video recap in the employee portal from my couch, cat in my lap, wine in hand. I didn't cry. I didn't scream, because the countdown had already started, and I knew exactly when the bomb would go off. I spent my final Monday through Friday doing what I'd always done, fixing what no one noticed, documenting what no one asked for, and making sure the gears didn't grind just because the operator changed. There was no sabotage, no angry keystrokes. I didn't salt the earth, I just vacuumed it, labeled it, zipped it into a backup, and put it on a damn silver platter. Because the truth was, I didn't need to break anything. I knew they would do it themselves. Hannah showed up each day like she was speedrunning her onboarding process. She typed fast, talked faster, nodded even when she didn't understand a damn thing. On Tuesday, she told me she streamlined my VPN access matrix by dumping it into a Notion template she got from a productivity influencer. On Wednesday, she said Brent had asked her to modernize the server room by making it more vibe-forward. I don't even know what that means. What I do know is that she unplugged a console to plug in a salt lamp. But I wasn't there to save anyone. I was there to let go, and I did. I handed off every account credential change log, every system dependency chain, every renewal calendar and API usage threshold. I printed out the server escalation ladder, color-coded, and taped it inside her desk drawer. I gave her a literal binder labeled Read this IF the server's DIE. She flipped through it like it was a takeout menu. This is so thorough, she said. Wow. It's giving legacy goddess vibes. It was Thursday afternoon when I submitted my final checklist to legal, per protocol. It included all the access termination logs, a compliance summary, and at the bottom, a clear note, bolded in 14-point calibri, Security Suite license, bound to user credential redacted. Transfer requires vendor compliance recertification and signed release form. I attached the vendor contact. I attached the clause from the procurement contract. I attached my current, valid cert annotated with the expiration date. 15 minutes later, I got the reply, not from a person, from the compliance inbox, an auto response, thank you for your submission. We'll review all transition materials after the completion of role reassignment. After, not before, after. That was the moment. That still, sharp moment in the middle of a chaotic afternoon where I just sat back in my chair and exhaled. Not because I was angry, not because I was vindictive, but because I knew what that sentence meant. It meant no one had read the documents. It meant no one would until something caught fire. I opened Slack, posted my final farewell message in the general channel, Thanks to everyone who made the past 8 years manageable, memorable, and mostly sane. If anything breaks next week, check the documentation. I promise it's all in there. Cheers, a few emojis, a couple you'll be missed replies, and then silence. On Friday, I packed up my cubicle, well, the 3 personal items I hadn't already taken home: a ceramic cat paperweight, a mug that said Root Cause Queen, and a stress ball shaped like a Wi-Fi icon. Hannah gave me a side hug, Brent gave me a nod from across the hall, and HR gave me a manila envelope with my final paycheck. No exit interview, no farewell lunch, just a good luck out there and the sound of a door that wouldn't recognize my badge on Monday. At 4:55 p.m., I opened my terminal one last time, logged into the vendor portal, verified that my credentials were still tied to the active license, still binding, still irreplaceable without formal process. Then I logged out. At 5:01 p.m., my CERT-triggered deactivation timer kicked in, automatically scheduled to begin its sunset protocol after 48 hours of inactivity. It was Friday evening. The clock had started, and nobody even knew they were holding a live grenade. Friday, 5:02 p.m., I shut my laptop and slid it into the return bin outside IT, didn't even look back. The badge reader at the front desk blinked red as I exited, like the system already knew I was gone. The building smelled like burnt coffee and toner, way it always did at the end of a long week. But this time, it wasn't just my week ending. Something bigger was closing, too. I could feel it in my chest, like the calm that settles over a frozen lake right before it cracks. The sunset protocol on my security credentials kicked in the moment I hit logout. It wasn't dramatic, no sirens, no pop-ups, just a silent internal clock ticking down. By design, the license didn't revoke access immediately. It slid into pending deactivation, giving the vendor system 48 hours to wait for reauthentication, renewal, or reassignment. If none came, it would lock everything. Everything. See, the security suite wasn't just antivirus and a few firewall rules. It was the digital nerve center, token validation, key rotation, endpoint management, breach detection. Without it, our production environment wasn't just exposed. It was inaccessible, locked behind a wall that only I had the key to. I hadn't designed it that way out of ego. Years ago, we'd had a data breach scare, HR laptops leaking sensitive files through a rogue Chrome extension. After that mess, I pushed hard for a license structure that wasn't blanket coverage. One credential, one cert, one gatekeeper. Me. Legal balked at first, but I argued my case, got it in writing, got it renewed. Brent never bothered to read any of it. Neither did Hannah. They just saw a box checked and assumed it meant done. Friday night, I poured myself a glass of wine and pulled up the vendor dashboard from my personal tablet. Not to tamper, just to observe. The license was now flagged as orphaned inactive. 48 hours left. Saturday morning, 9:12 a.m. A small yellow flag popped on the system health console. Heartbeat mismatch, token rotation overdue. Harmless to most eyes. But to me, that flag was like hearing your car make a soft clicking noise before the transmission gives out. Hannah didn't notice. She posted a story on Instagram of her morning matcha and her cat chewing a LAN cable. Caption, Tech Life lol. By Saturday evening, more alerts trickled in. Root certificate validation failed, fallback initiated. Audit log sync error, expected response timeout. Still nothing red, nothing screaming. Just polite little pings in the corner of a dashboard she probably hadn't pinned yet. I imagined her brushing them off, thinking it was a glitch or some legacy system artifact I forgot to clean up. I'd labeled everything. The audit logs even had a tab titled, "If this breaks, call vendor immediately." But knowing Brent, he'd already told her, we don't need to overreact to legacy processes. Sunday, 2:26 p.m. The vendor system pinged the license again. No response, no heartbeat. My credential had been offline for nearly 48 hours. Sunday, 7:40 p.m. Final alert sent to the company compliance email, credential expiration imminent. License deactivation scheduled for 4:02 a.m. Monday. It landed in an inbox no one checked. I knew that because I was the one who used to check it. By the time the sun set on Sunday, it felt like I was standing on a beach watching a tsunami pull back the tide. That eerie stillness before the crash. Not fear, not even triumph. Just a strange, suspended calm, like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each click a reminder that this wasn't sabotage, it was gravity. I didn't touch a thing. I didn't need to. Everything was happening exactly the way it was supposed to. They told me I was redundant. Turns out, redundancy would have saved them. Instead, they built the entire kingdom on a single key, and then fired the locksmith. Monday, 4:02 a.m. on the dot. The system did exactly what it was told to do. The license expired. The vendor's cloud security platform, acting like a dutiful little sentinel, executed the final phase of the sunset protocol. No drama, just precision. It revoked all production server access bound to my credentials. Remote keys, disabled. Endpoint tokens, invalid. VPN tunnels, severed. Every service tied to that central trust anchor went dark like someone flipped the breaker on the entire digital grid. The failover systems tried to kick in, bless their little robotic hearts, but without proper token validation, they couldn't authenticate anything. No clean handoff, no fallback access, just spinning wheels and blinking red lights. The control plane became a ghost town. The internal dashboard, normally a humming hub of green lights and stable metrics, was now a strobe-lit panic party of error messages. The alerts hit Hannah's phone at 4:06 a.m. I imagined her blinking awake in bed, rubbing her eyes, thinking it was just a false alarm. I'd seen the logs. I knew how many dependencies ran through that license. She didn't. Brent didn't. They thought it was a line item on a spreadsheet. They thought infrastructure was just there, like air or Wi-Fi in Starbucks. By 4:13 a.m., the overseas logistics platform reported its first outage. Package tracking API, offline, inventory sync with third-party warehouses, failed. The East Coast wasn't even awake yet and the bleeding had already started. By 5 a.m., the internal ops team couldn't get into their own terminals. Their two-factor authentication, run through the now expired security layer, was spitting out invalid tokens like bad raffle tickets. At 5:45, the first major client filed a Priority 1 incident. Their SLA guaranteed 99.99% uptime. Every 60 seconds of downtime meant contractual penalties, $10,000 per minute. By 6 a.m., the main dashboard was a kaleidoscope of red, backend services failing, logging pipelines broken. No one could log in, and even if they could, they had no clearance to change a thing. I sat at my kitchen table, still in my robe, sipping hot coffee and watching the vendor dashboard. Not logged in. Just monitoring the public status page, where the red indicator for license active had quietly changed to deactivated. Brent was probably still stuck in traffic when the floodgates opened. At 6:48 a.m., I got a text. Brent Walker, hey, quick question, are you available for a quick call? I didn't answer. At 7 a.m., my phone lit up again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, probably ops. Maybe legal, maybe Hannah crying in a broom closet. I didn't answer that either. Across town, execs were pacing their glass offices barefoot, suit jackets abandoned, shouting into muted Zoom calls while interns fetched Red Bulls and tried not to cry. Hannah, by most accounts, had a full breakdown by 7:15. She was last seen wheeling her desk chair into the hallway, muttering something about legacy traps and why didn't anyone tell me. Brent was in damage control mode. His perfect hair probably sticking to his forehead with flop sweat as he barked into a speakerphone, asking why nobody could just turn it back on, because it wasn't a switch. It was a system, my system, built over years, secured through hard lessons, reinforced with procedures nobody cared to learn until they all failed at once. By 7:30 a.m., the company had lost over $150,000 in SLA violations and client refunds. That number was growing faster than any of them could calculate, because no one could access the analytics platform that usually did that math. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat, but I did lean back and whisper to myself, business as usual. And for the first time in 8 years, I didn't feel tired. I felt seen. At 8:03 a.m., the ops director finally gave up trying to patchwork his way through the chaos and reached out to the vendor's support line. The rep, a man named Caleb with a soothing voice and a folder full of receipts, took less than 4 minutes to deliver the death sentence. Unfortunately, he said, with the calm of a surgeon delivering a terminal diagnosis, the production license was explicitly assigned to a certified individual user, her full name. As of this morning, her credentials are expired. Per the compliance clause, the license is now void. Reissuance will require a new certification process and formal release authorization from the former licensee. There was a pause on the line long enough to make a grown man consider prayer. Brent was reportedly in the war room by then, surrounded by 3 laptops, 4 sweaty directors, and 1 rapidly overheating junior admin. Hannah was nowhere to be found. Rumor was she'd locked herself in the unisex bathroom with a gallon of oat milk and a copy of Atomic Habits. Where's the damn documentation? Brent shouted. IT pulled up the transition checklist I'd left. At the very bottom, clear as daylight, there it was. Security Suite license. Bound to user credential her name. Transfer requires vendor compliance recertification and signed release form. They cross-referenced it with the original procurement contract, finally. Scanned all the way to page 9, clause 17b, under credential-specific license terms. I could picture their faces as the highlighter marks stared back at them like neon finger-pointing ghosts. License is non-transferable. In the event of credential expiration, recertification by a new credentialed party is required. Access is not reinstated without written release by the original credential holder. And then the cherry on top, the internal memo from 2 years ago. I still remember writing it, sent to Brent, well, to his predecessor at the time, and legal. Subject line, security license strategy, do not centralize under single credential without succession plan. Attached was a PDF outlining exactly what could happen in a scenario like this. The risks, the steps, the vendor contact info, everything. It had been acknowledged and stamped by Brent. His approval signature was right there, scribbled under agreed to proceed. Time-stamped, digitally signed, legal exploded. One of the assistants who still liked me DM'd me from her personal phone around 9:12 a.m., and her message was short. They're calling it a catastrophic oversight. Brent's in full panic mode, you legend. At 9:16 a.m., my old work phone rang. That old gray corporate-issued brick had been silent for days. When I left, I turned off notifications, deleted my contacts, and tossed it in the drawer next to my expired passports and broken Kindle. But now, it lit up like an emergency flare in the dark. Same number, same ringtone, same desperation. It rang again at 9:18, and again at 9:21. Then voicemail after voicemail. One from Brent, one from legal. One from Hannah, her voice cracking like she'd just run a marathon inside a haunted house. I didn't answer. I just stared at the phone. Let it buzz. Let it blink. Let it beg, because I already knew what they wanted. They wanted a lifeline. They wanted the woman they threw out like yesterday's firmware to bail them out of a mess they never even knew they were building. They wanted the key back, but keys don't come free, and I was done fixing things for free. By 10:07 a.m., they had exhausted every workaround, every back channel, every panic prayer IT could conjure. They tried to escalate through the vendor's offshore support team, no dice. They begged for temporary override, denied. They tried to spin up a new account under Hannah's name and have her certified retroactively. Vendor laughed them off the call. Policy was policy. Only the original licensee may issue a digital release, Caleb from support repeated like a gospel verse. Without that release, reissuance requires full recertification, including review of organizational compliance posture. Average timeline, 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks of bleeding clients, breached SLAs, executives grinding their molars into chalk dust. By 10:30 a.m., Brent's shirt was untucked, and someone had brought him a second monitor so he could triage emails while retyping the same apology to different clients in Slack. At 10:51, Junior PM suggested they just call her and be human about it. Brent reportedly threw a stress ball at the window and muttered something about leverage. At 11:08 a.m., my Gmail pinged. Subject, urgent, can we talk? From Brent Walker at company name com message. Hey, her name, hope you're doing well. Quick question, are you available for brief call this morning? We've hit a small snag and could really use your insight. Let us know a good time. Thanks. Brent, it took me 3 hours to respond. I read it at 11:09. I replied at 2:12. Subject, urgent, can we talk? Message, sure. Forward me the revised consulting contract. No emojis, no hope you're well, just the ask, because I'd already decided if they wanted me back, they'd do it on my terms. 5 minutes later, I had a response. Subject, urgent, can we talk? Message, of course. We're putting together a short-term return-to-work contract. Hoping to get you in for a few hours this afternoon, either on-site or remote, whatever works. Happy to discuss compensation. Really appreciate your help, nice try. I replied 15 minutes later, subject, contract terms message. Here's what I require, 1 week minimum retainer paid up front. Triple my previous hourly rate. Remote only. No NDA. I control the session, you don't. I'll notify the vendor myself. Any breach of these terms voids the contract. Let me know by end of day. Otherwise, best of luck with recertification. They didn't argue. At 3:08 p.m., a new PDF landed in my inbox. Signed by legal. Brent CC'd but suspiciously silent. Everything I asked for word, no edits, no fine print, no spin. At 3:14 p.m., the vendor platform recognized the signed release from my digital credential. At 3:19, the dashboard refreshed, license active. At 3:23, production access restored. At 3:25, the red flood of alerts began to dim. One by one, the system came back to life like it had been holding its breath for 3 days. And me? I was still at my kitchen table. Hair in a claw clip, flannel pajamas, cat curled around my feet like a space heater. I wasn't smiling, I wasn't angry, I was just still. I hadn't burned the bridge. They blew it up with their own arrogance. All I did was send them an invoice for the rebuild. Power didn't come from revenge, it came from being right, documented, and unignorable. They wanted me gone, but now I was the only thing keeping them alive. The retainer payment cleared by 4:02 p.m., like a clock resetting itself. I didn't even have to ask twice. The legal team, previously allergic to decisive action, was now treating every sentence I sent like scripture. They begged for a Zoom link. I offered an email thread. They wanted my help restoring monitoring services. I gave them step-by-step instructions like I was teaching toddlers to brush their teeth. While the system blinked back to life, one API here, one warehouse sync there, I sent a final message that wasn't part of any SOW or technical checklist. Subject, FYI paper trail message, attaching a prior conversation that may be relevant for your compliance review. Best, her name attachment. Centralized access warning PDF. It wasn't petty. It was professional, cold, surgical. Inside that PDF was an email chain from 2 years ago. Subject line, access consolidation vendor license structure risk. The first message was from me. Dated March 17, 2 years back. It outlined exactly what would happen if we centralized the security license under one credential. I explained the danger of no succession plan, the licensing delay from the vendor, the compliance exposure. The fact that our cyber insurance explicitly excluded coverage for failure to follow internal risk mitigation procedures. I had even bolded the phrase catastrophic service disruption scenario. The reply? From Brent. Short. Confident. This simplifies oversight. Proceed. Timestamped. Signed. CC'd to legal to ops to the head of compliance. For 2 years, that approval sat dormant in a folder labeled vendor stuff. I doubt Brent remembered sending it. I doubt he even read what I wrote back then. Probably thought it was more legacy noise. But now it was a landmine going off in slow motion. 10 minutes after I sent it, my inbox pinged again. Subject, urgent, internal risk disclosure from compliance at company name com message. Thanks for this. Our insurance policy team has requested immediate access to the original documentation. Can you confirm this email chain's authenticity? I didn't reply right away. Let him sit in it. Let the silence echo like the aftermath of a car crash nobody saw coming. At 4:37 p.m., another email came in, this time from Brent. Subject, quick clarification. Message, hey, just wondering if this access policy had been reviewed by legal at the time. Just trying to get all our ducks in a row for the compliance follow-up. Ducks in a row. Man really went from corporate overlord to panic pond manager in 72 hours. I didn't even type a new message. I just replied to the original thread from 2 years ago, where legal had literally written, acknowledged. No further questions. Flagging for future review of structure changes. Resenting that email was like tossing a match into a room already filled with gas. No flames yet, but everyone could smell what was coming, because now it wasn't just about technical access. Now it was about exposure. Insurance wouldn't cover the damages, they'd find a way to pin it on Brent's signature. Internal compliance had to file a post-incident review within 48 hours, which meant more digging, more memos, more eyes on every ignored warning I ever gave. This wasn't revenge, this was architecture. He didn't just fail to see the cracks, he signed off on removing the supports. I'd left the building, but the foundation kept the receipt, and now the weight of every bad decision was settling right on his chest. I leaned back in my chair and actually laughed. Quiet, dry, the kind of laugh that sounds more like air escaping than amusement, because I didn't burn the house down. He just forgot who built the wiring, and who warned him not to overload the fuse box. By 4:58 p.m., the last piece was ready. I logged into the vendor portal, my access now reactivated under the temporary consulting agreement they had tripped over themselves to sign. The dashboard greeted me like an old friend. All familiar metrics, audit logs, alerts blinking like dying embers. I clicked into the license panel, confirmed my credential, scanned the change history one last time. Then I did what they couldn't. I reactivated the license. No drama, no fireworks, just one soft green light switching from inactive to live. I didn't need to shout, the system spoke for me. By 5:03 p.m., token rotation resumed. API keys regenerated. Session logs started to flow. By 5:05, the production environment breathed again. Systems that had been choking for days began humming back to life, like engines being fed oxygen after a vacuum. Internal dashboards lit up green, one by one. The ERP system that ran their logistics queues reconnected to the warehouse. The client-facing interface that had been erroring out since Sunday night finally loaded cleanly, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. By 5:12 p.m., the client escalations stopped, not because the clients forgave them, but because the calls were now going straight to legal. I heard one exec called it a brand-level event, which is corporate for your name, just got blacklisted in 10 procurement departments. The company hadn't collapsed, but it had hemorrhaged. Word was already spreading in back-channel Slack threads, vendors, clients, competitors. Nobody wanted to integrate with a partner whose entire production stack could go dark because one person left without cake and a clearance checklist. By Tuesday morning, a new line appeared in the org chart. VP of Strategic Operations, reassigned, pending internal investigation, no press release. Just a quietly deleted LinkedIn update and a hallway rumor about misalignment in leadership expectations. I didn't have to do a thing. Brent's approval signature in that old email did the heavy lifting. I submitted my final invoice, triple my old rate, 1 week minimum, full retainer burned through in a single afternoon. It was paid within 24 hours. No back and forth, no red lines, they even offered to extend the engagement. I declined. I had already given them the fix. Anything else would just be babysitting. That Friday, I shut my laptop. The sun was setting outside. House was quiet except for the soft burble of my ancient coffee maker doing one last heroic drip into a chipped mug. I walked to the window, watched a squirrel fall out of a bush with the grace of a sock puppet, and whispered to no one in particular, business as usual. Not revenge, just balance. The system corrected itself not because I sabotaged it, but because I warned them and they chose arrogance over architecture. They thought I was just part of the furniture. Turns out I was the power line. And when they cut me out, the lights went with me. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.